At 0742 on March 6, 1945, Corporal Clarence Smoyer crouched inside the turret of an M26 Pershing tank in the rubble-choked streets of Cologne, watching a German Panther crew rotate their 75mm gun toward the intersection where two American Shermans had just stopped. 21 years old, 7 months in combat across France and Germany, 5 enemy tanks destroyed. The Panther fired twice. Both rounds punched through the lead Sherman's gun shield within inches of each other. 3 American crewmen died instantly. The commander tried to bail out, his left leg gone below the knee. Smoyer had grown up in Perryville, Pennsylvania, in coal country where his father worked the mines. He had never been in a fistfight. He had hunted exactly once, for rabbit, and felt sick afterward. Now he sat behind the gun sight of America's most powerful tank, watching smoke pour from a Sherman crew compartment 2 streets away. By March 1945, the U.S. Army had lost thousands of Sherman tanks to German guns. The Panther outweighed the Sherman by 10 tons. The Tiger weighed even more. German 75mm and 88mm guns could penetrate Sherman armor at ranges where American 75mm rounds bounced off German steel. During the Battle of the Bulge, 3 months earlier, American tank battalions had been devastated. Entire companies lost half their vehicles in single engagements. Crew survival rates told the story. If your Sherman got hit, you had seconds to escape before ammunition cooked off and turned 33 tons of steel into a crematorium. The problem had been obvious since Normandy. The solution had been delayed for 3 years. Army Ground Forces Command, led by Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, insisted the Sherman was adequate. Tank destroyers would handle enemy armor. American doctrine said tanks supported infantry and avoided tank versus tank combat. German doctrine said otherwise. So did battlefield reality. The Ordnance Department had designed a heavy tank in 1942. The T-26 program produced multiple prototypes. Each iteration added armor, improved the gun, refined the suspension. Each iteration also added weight and complexity. McNair's staff rejected every proposal. The Sherman worked fine in North Africa, they argued. Why fix what was not broken? By 1944, that argument was killing American tankers. The Battle of the Bulge changed everything. 400 German tanks, including Panthers and Tiger IIs, smashed into American lines in December 1944. Sherman crews fought bravely and died quickly. After the Ardennes, nobody could pretend the Sherman was sufficient. In January 1945, the first 20 T-26E3 tanks, later designated M26 Pershing, arrived at the Belgian port of Antwerp. General Omar Bradley split them between 2 veteran divisions, 10 to the 3rd Armored, 10 to the 9th Armored. The tanks reached a maintenance facility near Aachen, Germany, on February 17th. Division commanders sent their best crews for training. The Pershing had a different transmission than the Sherman, but similar controls. Each crew fired 28 rounds to familiarize themselves with the 90mm main gun. The flash was bigger. The recoil was harder. The noise made your ears ring even through the intercom headset. Smoyer remembered his first test fire. A farmhouse stood 1,200 yards downrange. Major General Maurice Rose, commander of the 3rd Armored Division, stood 20 feet behind the tank with his staff. Rose had ordered the target, the farmhouse chimney. Smoyer centered the reticle and pulled the trigger. The muzzle blast knocked Rose and every officer near him flat on their backs. The chimney exploded into fragments. Rose stood up, brushed dirt off his uniform, and grinned. Smoyer hit 2 more chimneys at longer range. Rose approved the Pershing for combat. If you want to see how Smoyer's experimental tank performed in the streets of Cologne, please hit that like button. Every like helps us share these forgotten stories with more people. Please subscribe. Back to Smoyer. The first Pershings entered combat on February 25th near the Roer River. One was knocked out the next day by a hidden Tiger, but others killed German tanks at ranges where Shermans would have been helpless. By early March, the 3rd Armored was pushing toward the Rhine. Cologne sat on the western bank, a major industrial city, Germany's 4th largest, now a wasteland of rubble and smoke. 262 Allied bombing raids had reduced most of the city to broken stone and twisted steel. Only the twin spires of Cologne Cathedral still stood, rising above the destruction like tombstones. On the morning of March 6th, Smoyer's crew received their orders. They would lead the advance into Cologne's city center. Their Pershing, one of only 20 in all of Europe, would be first through every intersection, first to draw fire from every hidden anti-tank gun. Rose himself had chosen them for the mission. It was supposed to be an honor. Smoyer touched the small Bible in his breast pocket and watched the streets ahead narrow into shadows. The Pershing lurched forward at 0800 hours. Staff Sergeant Robert Early commanded from the turret. Corporal John DeRiggi loaded the 90mm rounds. Private Homer Davis assisted on the bow machine gun. Private William McVeigh drove. Smoyer manned the main gun. They had been a crew since September 1944, fighting through Normandy hedgerows and Ardennes snowdrifts in a Sherman. 3 weeks ago, they received the Pershing. The crew named their tank Eagle 7 after the Philadelphia Eagles. Cologne had been Germany's fourth largest city, 1 million people before the war. Now perhaps 40,000 remained, hiding in cellars and subway tunnels beneath mountains of rubble. The streets were canyons of broken masonry. 3-story apartment blocks had collapsed into roadways. Tram lines twisted into the air like metal vines. Every intersection offered a dozen firing positions for German Panzerfaust teams. Every basement window could hide an 88mm anti-tank gun. The 3rd Armored Division had entered Cologne's outskirts on March 2nd. 4 days of house-to-house fighting followed. German defenders used the city's infrastructure against the Americans. Underground pedestrian tunnels connected basements across entire blocks. Soldiers called them mouse trails. German infantry would appear behind American positions, attack, then vanish back underground before anyone could respond. Snipers fired from church steeples and factory smokestacks. Anti-tank crews waited until American vehicles passed, then fired into the thin rear armor. The Pershing's advantages were obvious. Its frontal armor measured 4 inches thick, double the Sherman's protection. The 90mm gun could penetrate any German tank at combat range. But in urban warfare, those advantages meant less. A Panzerfaust fired from 20 feet away did not care about armor thickness. Molotov cocktails dropped from 3rd-story windows landed on engine decks where armor was thinnest. The Pershing weighed 46 tons. Many Cologne bridges could not support that weight. Streets that Shermans navigated easily became traps for the heavier vehicle. Smoyer watched through his periscope as Eagle 7 rolled past the remnants of what had been a shopping district. Mannequins lay scattered among bricks and glass. A streetcar sat overturned, its windows blown out. Fire had consumed entire blocks. The smell of smoke and worse things crept through the tank's ventilation system. Every 40 yards, the Pershing stopped while McVeigh checked for obstacles. Rubble could hide mines. Shell craters could break a track. The radio crackled with reports from other units. Sherman tanks were clearing side streets. Infantry squads moved building to building. German resistance was lighter than expected. Most Wehrmacht units had withdrawn across the Rhine during the night. The bridges were rigged with demolition charges. German engineers waited for the order to destroy them. Only rear guard units remained west of the river, volunteers who had sworn to fight to the last round. Eagle 7 rounded a corner and entered a broader avenue. The twin spires of Cologne Cathedral rose ahead, perhaps half a mile distant. The cathedral had survived the bombing through what many called a miracle. 262 raids had reduced the surrounding city to fragments, but the medieval structure stood intact. Its Gothic towers were navigation points for every unit in the city. Every map reference started from the cathedral. Every radio transmission mentioned the spires as a landmark. The Pershing advanced another block, then another. The streets grew wider as they approached the city center. More dangerous, too. Wide streets meant longer sightlines. Longer sightlines meant German gunners had more time to aim. Smoyer kept his eye pressed to the gun sight, scanning windows and doorways. His right hand rested on the turret traverse control. His left hand hovered near the trigger. At 09:15, the radio delivered new orders. German tanks were operating near the cathedral square. At least 2 Panthers confirmed, possibly a Tiger. American infantry had pulled back after taking casualties. Eagle 7 was to proceed to the cathedral area and eliminate enemy armor. Smoyer felt his mouth go dry. The Pershing had never faced a Panther in direct combat. Every crewman knew the statistics. Panther frontal armor was 5 inches thick. Its 75mm gun could penetrate 6 inches of steel at 1,000 yards. In North Africa and Normandy, single Panthers had destroyed entire American platoons. The Pershing's engine rumbled as McVeigh increased speed. The cathedral spires grew larger through the periscope. Somewhere ahead, German tank crews were waiting. Eagle 7 approached the cathedral district at 0930. The streets narrowed again. Buildings that still stood rose 4 and 5 stories, creating urban canyons where sunlight barely reached the pavement. Smoky haze from morning fires drifted between the ruins. McVeigh slowed the Pershing to walking speed. The 46-ton tank made less noise at low throttle, but every revolution of the treads still echoed off the masonry walls. Smoyer rotated the turret slowly, covering the left side of the street, while Davis watched the right through his bow gun periscope. The 90mm main gun swung across storefronts and alley mouths. Empty windows stared back like eye sockets in a skull. This section of Cologne had been a commercial district before the war. Department stores, cafes, office buildings. Now it was a maze of collapse and shadow where any doorway could hide a Panzerfaust team. The radio transmitted in short bursts. 2 companies of American infantry were pinned down 3 blocks east of the cathedral. German machine gun fire from multiple positions, mortar rounds falling on their location. They needed armor support, but no Shermans could reach them. The approach streets were blocked by rubble. Only the wider avenue that Eagle 7 was following provided a clear path to the cathedral square. Another transmission came through. 2 Sherman tanks from F Company had attempted to reach the cathedral from the north. Both were operating without infantry support, dangerous in urban terrain, but F Company's riflemen were engaged elsewhere. The Shermans had orders to reconnoiter the square, identify enemy positions, then withdraw and wait for reinforcements. Early acknowledged the transmission. Eagle 7 would link up with the F Company Shermans near the cathedral. 3 American tanks could suppress enemy positions long enough for infantry to advance. Standard combined arms tactics. The kind of operation the 3rd Armored had executed successfully dozens of times since Normandy. The Pershing rolled past a burned-out German half-track. Its crew lay nearby, killed by American machine gun fire sometime in the previous 24 hours. Beyond the half-track, the street opened into a small plaza. A fountain stood in the center, dry and pockmarked with shell fragments. The avenue continued straight ahead toward the cathedral spires. At 0947, Smoyer heard the sound through his headset. 2 rapid booms, heavy caliber, echoing from somewhere ahead. Then silence. Then a 3rd boom. Tank gunfire. Definitely tank gunfire. The characteristic crack thump of high-velocity rounds hitting armor plate followed a moment later. The radio erupted with frantic transmissions. F Company Sherman had been hit, crew bailing out, 2nd Sherman taking fire. German tank position unknown, but close to the cathedral. All units advised, Panther operating in cathedral vicinity. Early's voice came through the intercom, calm despite the situation. Eagle 7 would continue forward. They were the only American tank in position to engage. The F Company Shermans were likely destroyed or disabled. Infantry could not advance while a German tank controlled the square. The mission had not changed. Eliminate enemy armor. McVeigh shifted gears. The Pershing accelerated slightly. Still slow by open field standards, but faster than the careful pace they had maintained. Speed meant noise. Noise meant the Germans would hear them coming. But speed also meant less time exposed in any single position. Urban combat was a calculation of risks. Smoyer checked his ammunition. The ready rack held 6 90mm rounds within arm's reach. 3 armor-piercing, 3 high-explosive. DeRiggy had positioned more rounds throughout the turret, organized by type. In a prolonged engagement, they could fire 20 rounds before needing to restock from hull storage. Against a Panther, the fight would likely end after the first 2 or 3 shots. Either Eagle 7 would destroy the German tank quickly, or the German tank would destroy Eagle 7. Armor versus armor combat rarely lasted long. The street ahead curved slightly left. Beyond the curve, the cathedral square would be visible. Somewhere in that square, or on the streets adjacent to it, a Panther crew was waiting. They had already killed at least 3 American tankers. They knew more Americans were coming. Smoyer pressed his eye against the rubber cushion of the gun sight. His finger moved to the trigger. The turret traverse control felt solid under his right hand. Eagle 7 rounded the curve at 15 miles per hour, tracks clanking on the broken pavement, exhaust streaming from the engine grills. The cathedral spires filled the forward vision blocks. The cathedral square came into view at 09:52. The Gothic structure dominated the skyline, its twin spires rising 516 feet above the rubble. The plaza in front of the cathedral measured roughly 300 yards across. Once it had been paved with stone. Now shell craters and debris covered the surface. The Hohenzollern Bridge was visible beyond the cathedral, spanning the Rhine. German engineers had rigged it with enough explosives to drop the entire structure into the river. Smoke drifted across the square from fires still burning in nearby buildings. Through the haze, Smoyer could see the first Sherman. It sat motionless in the middle of a street that ran perpendicular to Eagle 7's avenue. The tank was angled slightly, as if it had stopped suddenly. Smoke poured from the open commander's hatch. The gun tube pointed skyward at an awkward angle. McVeigh brought Eagle 7 to a halt 1 block from the square. The Pershing sat in the shadow of a partially collapsed office building. From this position, the crew could observe the square without exposing themselves. Early studied the scene through his vision blocks. The Sherman had been hit at least twice, probably within seconds. Precision shooting. Professional gunnery. The German tank crew knew their business. The second Sherman was not visible from Eagle 7's position. Radio transmissions placed it somewhere on the northern edge of the square, also disabled. That meant the German tank, or tanks, had clear fields of fire covering multiple approaches to the cathedral. Any American vehicle attempting to cross the square would be targeted immediately. Early made his decision. He would reconnoiter on foot. Leaving the Pershing exposed and stationary was dangerous, but advancing blind into a prepared ambush was worse. He needed to see the German tank's position before committing Eagle 7 to the attack. He climbed out of the turret hatch and dropped to the street. An American soldier appeared from a doorway 30 yards ahead. Technical Sergeant Jim Bates, Army Signal Corps. He carried a 16mm film camera and wore a rucksack loaded with film magazines. Bates had been assigned to document the 3rd Armored Division's operations since Normandy. He filmed combat footage, interviewed soldiers, recorded the liberation of towns and cities. His footage appeared in newsreels shown in American movie theaters. Bates had been with an infantry squad when the first Sherman was hit. He had filmed the German tank's muzzle flash, the impact on the Sherman's turret, the crew attempting to escape. He had clear footage of the entire engagement. Now, he wanted more. The presence of an American heavy tank in Cologne was newsworthy. A battle between the Pershing and a German Panther would be extraordinary. Early and Bates moved forward together, staying close to the building walls. They reached a corner where they could observe the cathedral square without exposing themselves. Early scanned the plaza methodically. The disabled Sherman was clearly visible. Beyond it, partially concealed by a side street, he spotted the Panther. The German tank sat in perfect ambush position. Its gun faced down the avenue where the Shermans had approached. The 75mm barrel extended from the angular turret like a finger pointing at the kill zone. The Panther's crew had chosen their position carefully. They could cover the entire square while remaining partially hidden. Any American tank entering from the north would expose its vulnerable side armor. Early studied the geometry. The Panther could not see Eagle 7's current position. The building blocked their line of sight. But if Eagle 7 advanced into the square, the Germans would spot them immediately. A frontal engagement across 300 yards of open ground favored neither side. Both tanks had guns capable of penetrating the other's armor at that range. But there was another option. A side street ran parallel to Eagle 7's avenue. If the Pershing could loop around the block, they might approach from the west. The Panther's gun faced north. Its turret would need to rotate to engage a threat from the west. Turret rotation took time. Not much time, perhaps 3 or 4 seconds, but enough. Enough for one shot. Early returned to Eagle 7. He explained the plan through the intercom. They would advance down the parallel street. At the intersection closest to the cathedral, they would turn left and enter the square. The Panther would be to their right, roughly 90 degrees from Eagle 7's gun. Smoyer would have a clear shot at the German tank's side armor, the thinnest armor, the killing shot. McVeigh acknowledged. DeRiggi loaded an armor-piercing round. Davis readied the bowgun. Smoyer rotated the turret until the main gun pointed right, anticipating the angle they would need when they reached the intersection. The Pershing's engine revved. The 46 tons of steel began moving. Bates positioned himself in a second-story window overlooking the cathedral square. His camera was ready. Eagle 7 rolled toward the intersection where a Panther crew waited. Eagle 7 entered the side street at 0958. The avenue was narrower than the main approach, barely wide enough for the Pershing's bulk. Building fragments littered the pavement. McVeigh navigated around a crater, keeping the tank moving at steady speed. Too slow, and they would be an easy target. Too fast, and Smoyer could not aim properly. The intersection ahead appeared through the driver's vision blocks. Beyond it, the cathedral square opened to the right. Smoyer kept his eye pressed to the gun sight, watching the angle where the Panther would appear. His finger rested on the trigger. The turret was already traversed 90 degrees right. When they cleared the corner, the German tank should be directly in his sight picture. Should be. Combat never matched the plan exactly. 50 yards from the intersection, 40 yards, 30. McVeigh maintained speed. The engine noise would alert the Panther crew. The Germans would hear the Pershing before they saw it. But sound took time to locate. Direction was difficult to determine in the echoing streets. The German commander would need seconds to identify the threat. 20 yards. The Pershing's bow emerged from the side street into the intersection. McVeigh's periscope gave him a limited view to the right. He saw the Panther immediately. The German tank sat exactly where Early had described, perhaps 110 yards away. The distance was point-blank range for a 90mm gun, but the Panther's turret was moving. The long gun barrel was rotating toward them. Someone in the German tank had spotted the Pershing faster than expected. McVeigh made a split-second decision. He did not stop the tank. Stopping would make Eagle 7 stationary. A stationary tank was a dead tank. He gunned the throttle instead. The Pershing lurched forward into the intersection, crossing the German tank's line of fire. Smoyer saw the Panther appear in his sight, the angular turret, the long gun, the dark muzzle swinging toward him. Every instinct screamed that he was looking directly down the barrel of a 75mm cannon that could penetrate his armor at this range. Training took over. Smoyer did not wait for the Pershing to stop. American tanks rarely fired on the move. The gun was not stabilized. Accuracy dropped significantly when the vehicle was moving, but stopping meant dying. He compensated for the motion, led the target slightly, and squeezed the trigger. The 90mm gun fired at 09:59 and 12 seconds. The armor-piercing round crossed 110 yards of open space in a fraction of a second. It struck the Panther's turret face just below the gun mantlet. The impact was visible even through the muzzle flash and smoke. A shower of sparks erupted from the point of contact. Metal fragments spalled off the interior surface, turning into shrapnel inside the crew compartment. Inside the Panther, Oberleutnant Wilhelm Bartelborth tried to process what he was seeing. The tank that had appeared in the intersection was too low and angular to be a Sherman. It looked almost German. He hesitated. Was it friendly? The question lasted perhaps half a second. Then the impact came. McVeigh brought the Pershing to a stop in the middle of the intersection. Fully exposed now. No cover. But stationary meant Smoyer could aim properly. DeRiggi already had another armor-piercing round in his hands. The breech was open. He slammed the round home and locked the breech. Smoyer had not taken his eye from the sight. The first shot had hit high. Good hit, but not catastrophic. The Panther was still operational. He adjusted his aim point lower, targeting the hull side just below the turret ring. The Panther's side armor was thinner than the front, 40mm instead of 80. The 90mm gun could penetrate 40mm easily. He fired again at 09:59 and 17 seconds. The second round struck the Panther's right side, penetrating the armor plate and continuing through the crew compartment. The projectile exited through the left side armor, leaving 2 holes the size of dinner plates. Inside the tank, systems began failing. Hydraulics ruptured. Ammunition ignited. Bartleby threw open his hatch and jumped. He landed on the street behind the Panther, away from the Pershing. 3 other crewmen followed, scrambling out of hatches as smoke began pouring from the engine compartment. 1 man did not make it out. Smoyer fired a 3rd time at 09:59 and 23 seconds. The round struck low on the turret, just above where the hull met the turret basket. Fire erupted from the impact point. Flames spread quickly, fed by leaking fuel and burning hydraulic fluid. Within seconds, the entire Panther was engulfed. In the 2nd-story window, Jim Bates kept his camera running. He had captured the entire engagement. 45 seconds from the first shot to the Panther burning. The film showed everything. The Pershing entering the intersection, the German gun rotating, the muzzle flashes, the impacts, the crew bailing out. Smoker sat back from the gun sight. His hands were shaking. The Panther was destroyed. Eagle 7 was intact. Everyone in the crew was alive. The Pershing had proven itself. The Panther burned for the next 3 hours. Ammunition continued cooking off inside the hull, sending sparks and fragments into the air. By noon, the fire had consumed everything flammable. The turret sat at an odd angle, heat-warped and blackened. The bodies of German soldiers lay scattered around the cathedral square. Infantry that had been supporting the Panther had withdrawn across the Rhine when their armor support was destroyed. American troops moved into the area by early afternoon. Bates descended from his observation post and approached Eagle 7. The crew stood outside the Pershing, smoking cigarettes and checking the tank for damage. They had taken no hits. The Panther had never fired. Bartleby's hesitation had cost his crew those critical seconds. Bates filmed the crew posing near their tank. Smoyer stood to the side, uncomfortable with the attention. By 1400 hours, additional American units had secured the cathedral area. Engineers began checking the Hohenzollern Bridge for demolition charges. Infantry squads cleared buildings methodically. Resistance was light. Most German forces had retreated during the engagement with the Panther. The sound of heavy tank guns in the city center had told them their defensive position was collapsing. But the battle for Cologne was not finished. German units still held portions of the city east of the cathedral. Isolated strongpoints needed to be eliminated. Eagle 7 received orders to continue the advance. The crew remounted. McVeigh started the engine. The Pershing rolled deeper into the ruined city. At 1432, Eagle 7 entered a narrow street 3 blocks from the cathedral. Buildings rose on both sides, creating a corridor barely wider than the tank itself. Ahead, the street opened into a small intersection. Beyond the intersection, the route continued toward the Rhine riverbank. A black automobile appeared suddenly from a side street, racing across the intersection. The car was moving at high speed, weaving between debris. To Smoyer, it looked like a staff car. German officers used similar vehicles to move between command posts. In urban combat, any unidentified vehicle was a potential threat. Civilians had been evacuated weeks ago. Anyone still in Cologne was either a combatant or supporting the German war effort. Smoyer opened fire with the coaxial machine gun. Tracer rounds streaked across the intersection. Several hit the car's body panels. Glass shattered. But the vehicle did not stop. It continued across the intersection, disappearing down another street. At the same moment, from a concealed position to Smoyer's left, a German Panzer IV fired its machine gun at the same car. The tank sat hidden behind a partially collapsed building, invisible to Eagle 7. Its crew had also spotted the automobile and engaged. The combined fire from both tanks raked the vehicle. The car jerked to a stop. The driver slumped over the wheel. A passenger door opened. A figure fell onto the street and did not move. Smoyer saw the muzzle flash from the German tank. A Panzer IV, older model, probably a Mark IV Ausf H. Not as dangerous as the Panther, but still capable of destroying a Sherman. Against a Pershing, the odds favored the American tank. But the Panzer's position was good. It had cover. Eagle 7 sat exposed in the street. The German tank began to withdraw, backing deeper into its concealed position behind the collapsed building. Smoyer could see only the front portion of the hull, not enough to guarantee a killing shot. The Panzer disappeared completely behind the rubble. McVeigh tried to maneuver the Pershing for a better angle, but the narrow street limited movement. The building that concealed the German tank was a 4-story residential structure. The front facade had collapsed, but the rear portion still stood. Interior walls were visible through the gap. The Panzer was somewhere behind those walls, repositioning for another shot. Smoyer made a decision. He could not see the German tank, but he could see the building. He rotated the turret until the 90mm gun pointed at the base of the standing wall section. The high explosive round in the breech was designed to destroy fortifications and buildings. He aimed for the corner support, where the wall's structural integrity was weakest. The gun fired at 14:34 and 48 seconds. The high explosive round detonated against the brick and concrete. The explosion removed a section of the corner support approximately 6 feet wide. For a moment, nothing happened. Then physics took over. Without the corner support, the entire wall section lost stability. 4 stories of masonry and wooden beams began to collapse inward. The building fell onto itself in a cascade of dust and fragments. Tons of rubble crashed down, filling the space where the Panzer IV had been concealed. The noise echoed through the street like thunder. Dust clouds billowed outward, obscuring visibility for several seconds. When the dust cleared, the building was gone. In its place sat a mountain of broken stone and twisted metal. Somewhere beneath that pile, a German tank sat buried. Inside that tank, 18-year-old machine gunner Gustav Schaefer and his commander had seconds to escape before the rubble sealed them inside. Schaefer and his tank commander clawed their way out of the Panzer IV through the turret hatch. Rubble covered the tank's hull. Dust filled the air so thick it was difficult to breathe. They scrambled over broken masonry and twisted steel beams, moving away from the American tank before more rounds came. The rest of their crew remained inside the buried vehicle, attempting to extract themselves through other hatches. Within minutes, all 4 crew members had escaped. They disappeared into the ruins, making their way toward the Rhine. By nightfall, they had crossed the river and surrendered to American military police. Eagle 7 continued operations in Cologne for another 2 days. The city fell completely to American forces by March 8th. Engineers secured the Hohenzollern Bridge before German demolition teams could destroy it, but other bridges across the Rhine had been blown. The cathedral stood intact, a Gothic monument rising above devastation. Bates's footage of the Panther engagement reached newsreel editors within a week. The film appeared in American movie theaters by late March. Smoyer's sister saw it at a local cinema in Pennsylvania. She recognized her brother and brought their parents to see the screening the following day. The 3rd Armored Division did not rest. By March 10th, they were advancing east beyond the Rhine, pushing deeper into Germany. Resistance varied. Some towns surrendered without fighting. Other locations required house-to-house clearance. The Wehrmacht was disintegrating, but isolated units continued following orders. Fanatics and SS troops fought to the death. Hitler Youth members threw themselves at American tanks with Panzerfausts. On March 30th, Major General Maurice Rose was riding at the front of a column south of Paderborn. His command style had not changed. He still led from forward positions, refusing to direct operations from a rear headquarters. At approximately 1800 hours, his jeep encountered a German tank unit that had broken through American lines. Tiger tanks blocked the road ahead. Rose's driver attempted to evade, but a Tiger commander cut them off. The German soldier emerged from the turret hatch and pointed a machine pistol at the jeep. Rose reached toward his holster, either to surrender his weapon or to resist. The German fired. Rose was hit multiple times and died instantly. He was the highest-ranking American officer killed by enemy fire in the European theater. His body was recovered the next day by elements of the 3rd Armored Division. Smoyer's unit was part of the recovery operation. Rose's death affected the entire division. Soldiers who had served under him since North Africa struggled with the loss. He had been a demanding commander, but fair. He had taken the same risks he asked of his men. His funeral was held at the Netherlands American Cemetery in Margraten. Thousands attended. The war continued. The 3rd Armored pushed east through April, encountering pockets of resistance that collapsed quickly once engaged. By late April, German units were surrendering en masse. The Wehrmacht had ceased to exist as an organized fighting force. On May 7th, Germany surrendered unconditionally. May 8th was declared Victory in Europe Day. Smoyer remained in Germany through the summer as part of the occupation force. Eagle 7 was eventually shipped back to the United States for display and study. The Ordnance Department wanted to analyze the Pershing's combat performance. Engineers documented every scratch and dent on the armor. Ballistic experts measured the gun barrel wear. Maintenance crews noted mechanical issues. By September 1945, Smoyer received orders to return home. He sailed from Bremerhaven to New York aboard a troop transport. The voyage took 8 days. He arrived at Fort Dix, New Jersey for processing. Within a week, he received his discharge papers. Corporal Clarence Smoyer, United States Army, service number 334-90086, was released from active duty on September 24, 1945. He returned to Pennsylvania, to Lehighton, where his parents still lived, to familiar streets and people who remembered him as the quiet kid who had never wanted to fight. He found work at a cement plant. He married Melba Whitehead in 1946. They had 3 children. He rarely spoke about the war, but the war had not finished with him. At night, he dreamed about Cologne, about the cathedral spires rising above smoke, about the Panther burning in the square, and about a black automobile racing across an intersection caught between American and German guns, about a figure falling from the passenger door onto the cobblestones. That image would haunt Clarence Smoyer for the next 68 years. For decades, Smoyer carried the weight of that moment, the woman in the car, the figure that fell to the street. He did not know who she was. He did not know if his bullets had killed her or if the German tank's fire had been responsible. He knew only that she was dead and that he had pulled the trigger. His wife Melba noticed the nightmares. He would wake up swinging his fists at enemies only he could see. The memories were so vivid that decades felt like days. His son Barry died of a heroin overdose in the 1970s. Melba developed Alzheimer's disease and eventually forgot his name. She passed away in 2017 after 71 years of marriage. The people who had anchored Smoyer's civilian life were gone. The war remained. In 1996, at age 73, Smoyer saw Jim Bates's footage of Cologne for the first time. A documentary about the 3rd Armored Division included the cathedral duel, but the footage also showed something Smoyer had never seen clearly during the battle: the black automobile, the machine gun fire, the passenger falling from the car, a woman, young, dead. The image confirmed what Smoyer had feared for 50 years. He had killed a civilian. The knowledge was crushing, but it also created a need for resolution. He wanted to know who she was. He wanted to apologize to her family. He wanted forgiveness, though he did not believe he deserved it. In 2013, at age 89, Smoyer returned to Cologne. A German journalist had researched the incident and identified the victim, Katharina Esser, 26 years old, the youngest of 4 sisters. She had cared for her parents while her sisters married and started families. She worked as a clerk in a grocery store and took night classes in home economics. On March 6, 1945, she and her boss had attempted to escape the city. They were caught in the crossfire. The journalist arranged a meeting at Esser's grave. Smoyer arrived expecting to be alone with his guilt. Instead, he found Gustav Schaefer waiting for him, the German gunner whose Panzer IV had also fired at the car, the man who had been buried under rubble when Smoyer collapsed the building. They were both 18 years older than they had been in 1945. Both carried the same memory. Both believed they had killed Katharina Esser. They met on the cathedral steps. Smoyer extended his hand. Schaefer took it. They walked together to the mass grave where Esser was buried, along with other civilian casualties. Neither man knew whose bullets had killed her. Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. The chaos of urban combat made certainty impossible. What mattered was that they had both fired. They shared responsibility. They shared guilt. Schaefer placed yellow roses on the grave. Smoyer knelt to do the same and lost his balance. Schaefer caught him before he fell. 2 old men who had tried to kill each other 68 years earlier now held each other up at the grave of the woman caught between them. They became friends. Letters crossed the Atlantic. Video calls connected Pennsylvania and Germany. They discussed the war not as enemies, but as men who had survived it and were trying to understand it. Schaefer died in 2017. Smoyer sent flowers to the funeral with a note, "I will never forget you. Your brother in arms, Clarence." On September 18, 2019, Clarence Smoyer received the Bronze Star for Valor at a ceremony in Washington. He was 95 years old, the last surviving member of Eagle 7's crew. The other crew members received their medals posthumously, their families accepted on their behalf. Clarence Smoyer died on September 30, 2022, at his home in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He was 99 years old. Every March 6th since 2013, yellow roses have appeared on Katharina Esser's grave in Cologne. Someone remembers. Someone still apologizes. The Panther still sits in front of Cologne Cathedral in old photographs, burning. The Pershing that destroyed it sits in the National Armor and Cavalry Museum. The film footage still exists, 45 seconds that changed how America understood armored warfare. But the real story was never about tanks. It was about men who went to war, killed because they were ordered to, and spent the rest of their lives trying to make peace with what they had done. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We are rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about tank gunners who never wanted to fight, but became the best at what they did. Real people, real heroism, real guilt, real redemption. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You are not just a viewer. You are part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you are here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Clarence Smoyer and Katharina Esser do not disappear into silence. These people deserve to be remembered, and you are helping make that happen.